This show is brought to you by PIVX Private Instant Verified Transactions. With its groundbreaking zero coin staking and masternodes, PIVX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex, and for more information go to www.pivx.org.
Hello and welcome to Token TV Developers Corner with me, Cryptosi, and today I am joined by a very special guest, a man who goes by the name of Fuzzbawls. He's a core developer for PIVX. Fuzzbawls, it's great to have you on the show.
I'm doing good. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good. Okay, so we won't waste any time. Most people know who you are and are quite familiar with your work, so we'll jump straight into it. For the people who haven't heard the Developers Corner podcast before, the way we do it is we go into actual GitHub and we look at some of the pull requests that have become commits or not, and we just discuss them and get the actual developers' take on it and try to get a bit more information. So the first one, the links for all of the GitHub flashpoints will be in the description as well. So the first one was from the 10th of September, and it was RPC don't allow backup wallet to overwrite the wallet in use. So Fuzzballs, could you tell us a little bit about that actual commit?
Yeah, so basically what that was doing was adding a layer of protection for the user. It was already very, very rare for anybody to actually try and overwrite or try to use the existing wallet as the backup destination. But this pull request just ensured that it wouldn't even be possible. When a file gets written to on computer systems, if it's already in use and locked by, say, the desktop wallet app, it could cause problems, collisions. Two programs trying to access the same file at the same time doesn't really work out well. So it was just a precautionary thing.
Okay, so I'm assuming it would prevent possible file corruption and people losing their wallet data.
Yeah.
Okay. On this particular situation, you got the heralded UT-ACK. Looking at these, do you think that these untested acknowledgements are a good thing? Or do you think that they lead to like a lower standard of code, or do you think that for something this simple, it's kind of justified?
It really depends on what is actually changing in the pull request. In this particular case, the change set was rather small and very, straightforward as simple logic. So UT obviously stands for untested, and what that really means is that someone, they didn't compile the, pull request changes and run the wallet and try and execute whatever the pull request was saying it would either change or prevent. This one was so simple to the point where just looking at the code, you could see that it was going to do what it was intended to do.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for that one, Fuzzballs. So yeah, we'll jump straight into the second situation on GitHub, which was a build GCC-7 and glibc-2.27 back compacts. So this one pretty much went straight over my head. So could you explain what this one was about?
Yeah. Okay. So this one focuses mainly on Linux. There's compilers, which is GCC, and different versions of the GCC compiler have that are a standard C library. That's glibc. Currently on Linux, we support the C library all the way down to version 2.27. that allows the wallet to operate on like Ubuntu or Debian operating systems all the way back to I think it's Ubuntu 12.
Okay.
So in newer versions of the GCC compiler, they have a much higher version of the C library that they use as standard. And in GCC 7 and 8's particular case, there is no built-in backwards compatibility with the 2.27 C library. So what that means is if a wallet is compiled on, say, the most recent version of Ubuntu, being Bionic 18, that wallet would not be compatible with older versions of Ubuntu. So this was a backwards compatibility change that ensured that our release wallets that people can download, whenever we do a release, download the precompiled wallet. It ensures that those wallets are still backwards compatible to the older versions of Linux C libraries.
Right. Okay. Excellent. This one was a bit different to me because it had a marker by it which stated that it was high priority. So why did you feel the need to mark this one as high priority?
It was basically high priority because a as unyet submitted pull request that I've been working on changes the build target for both our continuous integration, that's Travis, as well as our Gideon, which is what we use when we precompile release binaries. Both of those systems are moving to Ubuntu Bionic for their compilations. So this was high priority because once that happens, this would have needed to be in before that update. So it was marked high priority basically to get more eyes on it, more testing on it, sooner rather than later, so it could be merged and I could continue working on the build updates.
Okay. Yes, because I saw that this has been ongoing for some time. So I guess it's the constant, every time, the constant need for backward compatibility. So I guess this is the type of thing that you'll be doing for PIVX into the future, well into the future, as the project progresses, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. I can see the code was reviewed by Warrows and he acknowledged it, some 50 odd lines of code. I was just wondering, how long would you have expected a review like that to have taken Warrows? How many hours do you think it would take for him to get through something like that?
Gosh, that's a pretty variable answer to that question. Looking at the lines of code itself wouldn't take that long, but actually doing the actual runtime testing of it could take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the level of the intensity of testing, how many iterations of testing, how many operating systems someone would test against. So yeah, it could take an hour, take a few hours.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's quite interesting because with the way the open source works is that when you've suggested something or you've made a request and then someone else has to go and then test it and see what you've done and verify it, it's quite interesting to see how long that will take, especially for people who are not developers, because a lot of the time what you guys do, it seems to be behind a kind of like a veil that the rest of us mortals don't understand. So I think it's quite interesting. So thanks for answering that one.
Yeah. And real quickly, anytime there's like a build system change, especially one that deals with backwards compatibility or cross compatibility between multiple versions of Linux and operating systems, it is a little bit more involved as far as testing goes. It's not a quick matter of, okay, let me recompile and start up the wallet and make sure things are still working or working as they should. you actually got to spool up, multiple virtual machines, or if you're lucky enough and have multiple computers that just so happen to be running different versions of OSs, you can do that as well. So it's a little bit more, involved.
So I guess between the two actual GitHub commits that we've looked at, we're looking at pretty much the two extremes of one which needs quite a lot of testing, and then the first one which we looked at, which kind of needs none.
Exactly. You're exactly right. They're complete polar opposites as far as reviewing and testing go.
This show is brought to you by PIVX Private Instant Verified Transactions. With its groundbreaking zero-coin staking and masternodes, PIVX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex, and for more information, go to www.pivx.org.
Okay, so moving on to our third and final commit. It was quite a big deal when it had pretty much everybody in the PIVX community speaking about it. And it was a commit to the actual Bitcoin core code itself. And the commit was to fix Qt's RCC determinism. So Fuzzbawls, could you tell us what that actually means?
Yeah, so Qt is what the graphical wallet is designed with. And inside Qt's set of utilities is a program called RCC. It has to do with resource files, like all the image files that you see, button icons, splash images when the wallet starts up, and the RCC program is called to generate code from basically XML files. What I discovered when I was doing some updates to the Qt version used in release wallets was that a semi-recent change to that particular utility, RCC, was generating dynamic code instead of deterministic code. Determinism basically is important in release wallets because it ensures that no matter where or who, everybody compiling with a particular commit or tag all generate the exact same results as far as the exe or the binary files. All of those files, if you do like a MD5 hash of them, they all have the exact same results. And this little bug or inconsistency with RCC was making it set so that those results were never consistent.
Okay, so what would that have meant for the end user? Because this bug seemed to have been reported way back in August of 2017. Is that correct?
There was a similar bug back in August, but no, or August 2017. But no, this particular bug wasn't reported until I opened up. Well, basically until I opened up the pull request with Bitcoin.
Ah, right. Okay. So when you actually found this issue and decided to do it, was it your work with PIVX that led you to find a solution, or did you actually work on it exclusively?
Yeah, it was my work with PIVX that caused this issue to be noticed, and then it was my continued work in PIVX that found the solution. Basically, what I did for Bitcoin was I just pulled out my solution and submitted it to them standalone.
Okay, it's interesting that Bitcoin itself has so many forks. So how comes none of the other Bitcoin forks would have found this solution already and then submitted it?
I think a lot of it has to do with timing. Bitcoin tends to be well ahead when it comes to things like build systems, dependency versions. They're pretty much at the forefront. It just so happened that I was working on upgrading PIVX's dependency namely Qt's dependency version, at the same time that they were.
Okay. So is there any incentive at all for people to upgrade Bitcoin's core?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of incentive. A lot of people look at Bitcoin as kind of the gold standard, and rightfully so. I mean, they're the oldest project of this kind. A lot of people have benefited from the work submitted there. And I suppose on some level there's the whole prestige thing of getting something into Bitcoin's code base. My reasons for submitting it to Bitcoin were basically just for it to be complete.
Yeah. So do you remember who acknowledged your request, and how does it feel to be a member of such an exclusive group of developers now, the people who have actually committed to Bitcoin's core?
Yeah, let me see if I can get a count real quick. The number of people that acknowledged, let's see, Marco, Ken, Practical Swift, the Uni, Corey Fields. He was actually very helpful during the review process. He's the one that does a lot of this type of work, typically in Bitcoin. So we had a little back and forth, and all those comments are on the pull request in Bitcoin's repository. Jonas had a comment in there. And
You see, I've what we'll do is we'll make sure we'll definitely put the pull request as well as the commit into the description below. But what I was actually wondering was, these developers who work on Bitcoin Core, are they exclusive to Bitcoin, or do they often work on other projects as well?
I think a lot of them do work on other projects. How many and which ones is anybody's guess.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual Bitcoin Core maintainers, the people that have commit and merge access to that particular repository, most of their work is with Bitcoin. As far as cryptocurrencies go, every now and then you'll see one of them submitting details, fixes, or bug reports elsewhere. So it's not an exclusive thing that they only work with Bitcoin.
Yeah, excellent. That's one of the things that I really like about GitHub, actually, is that you can actually click a developer and then see all of the things that they've been working on. I find that really quite useful, especially when putting together these podcasts.
Oh, for sure.
Right, so Fuzzballs, moving on, we're going to go into the final section, which is where we just answer a few questions that have been submitted by community members. The first one is, there's three questions. The first one is, when will the next wallet, the next PIVX wallet be released? And am I correct in guessing or assuming that it's going to be 3.2.0?
The next release version is going to be 3.2.0. As far as when it will be released, I know it's not the answer anyone wants to hear, but it's the most honest answer.
Okay. What could you explain kind of briefly what goes into the release of a new version? What type of steps you have to go through when you're releasing a new upgrade, like this one?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of steps involved with release authoring and release distribution. With a major release like this, basically we need to have the master branch updated with all the pull requests merged in, and testing finished and approved and all that fun stuff. And then we create a new branch for the version itself. And into that branch go the release notes. It updates the actual version number that's displayed inside the wallet itself. We pull in all the finished translations over from Transifex. If some aren't done, then they just show up as English, but we try and get as many translated strings in as possible. Then we have to start the tagging. Now the tag is important. When a release is actually tagged in GitHub, that is basically the time that the release is quote unquote done.
Okay.
It's not going to change at that point, or that particular tag number is not going to change. The code that is associated with that tag is basically set in stone at that point. That's typically when exchanges and services, third parties are notified that the new version is ready. That usually takes about a day's worth of work, sending emails, messages, Slack notifications, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we have John that handles that for us, and the developers can actually move on to what is known as Gideon building. Now, Gideon is what's used to actually compile the binary packages that the end user downloads. So we have our devs all run Gideon independently on their own, and the results of those Gideon builds are then compared against each other. And we have a policy where no less than two independent, individuals' results need to match before those binary files are considered acceptable.
Okay.
And that step is basically a safeguard to ensure that no one is being malicious and trying to sneak in something to the code that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, excellent. I understand. Okay, right. Thanks for that then, Fuzzballs. And the final question, which is a very broad one, and I know you're going to love this, but what are your plans for PIVX over the next few months? And is there anything else high priority in the works or anything that you've got in mind?
My plans going forward through to the end of the year is going to be rather non-glorious, I guess you could say. A lot of cleaning up of the code, fixing typos in comments or whatnot. I'm going to continue updating the actual core code to be a little bit more in line with more recent versions of Bitcoin. Since we're based on Bitcoin, it's always a good idea to try and keep up to date, as it were. As far as things that are high priority, there is one thing that is probably going to be, well, I'd say, most important thing for our end users that are staking is an optimization to ZPIV staking. And that's going to be coming out with the 3.2.0 release. Basically, that will make ZPIV staking much more optimized and much more efficient, which will reduce the number of orphans that people are seeing considerably.
Okay. And that's, at the moment, that's probably the most glamorous thing that you're working on right now within PIVX, you'd say.
Yep. Everything else is kind of behind the scenes, on a code level. Nothing user facing per se. I mean, users will see benefits of updates and the cleaning of code in terms of the program's going to be more stable, it's going to be more responsive, stuff like that. But it's not going to be like in your face.
Yeah, I get you. Right, Fuzzballs, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people go to find out more about you and your work?
GitHub is really the best place to find out about what I've done as far as programming.
Okay.
My entire crypto involvement history is available on there.
Brilliant. Fuzzbawls, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Cheers, mate. Take care.
Have a good one.
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media. Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PIVX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over, so if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed.